To be here, Joe. Absolute pleasure. Notwithstanding the recording message up over that, lovely to be here on a very warm Melbourne day, right? A bit of sun.
First day of summer, very exciting. And although here in Merri Creek, when I am, it's Gunyang season, the season of the kangaroo apple. So I think this is a great time to acknowledge the traditional custodians of all lands we're dialing in from today. For Craig and I, that is the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation. We pay our respects to elders past and present. Of course, it's also Advent Calendar Day. Many Advent calendars being torn open across the country. And in my house, we had the request at 3:30 this morning, which was quite clearly denied for a couple more hours. But look, thank you everyone for dialing in today. It is such a busy time, and so we were so pleased to have more than 200 people joining us online today. We would love to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the lands of, everybody dialing in today. And before we sort of start off, we'd like to share with you that there's 144 talent teams that have contributed in various sizes across Australia and New Zealand. What was really nice, Craig, when we looked at the data, what we saw was that we had about a third of the organisations were 500 people or below. Almost a third were workforces of 5,000 or more. And then the remaining roughly third were somewhere in between. So it's really nice to get such sort of diverse opinions from people of, all size teams and organisations.
Yeah, it's also very good to get empirical data, right, Joe? The biggest issue we find is just this flood of information and misinformation and speculation and so on that and blown out terms, the great resignation, et cetera, but this actually brings it down to the facts in our market, which is tremendous. So great job.
Yeah. Look, it's clear that we are heading into the perfect talent storm. Not all of us are facing the storm in the same boat. Some organisations are facing it in their battleship and others in a sailboat. Hopefully no one out there in a bathtub. But maybe if you're dialing in online today, if you want to share in the chat feed, what kind of boat are you facing the storm in?
Right, and while you work out what boat you're in, I will point out some facts that have come through, right? So 92%, 9 out of 10 teams are finding it harder to hire talent compared to prior to the pandemic. 60% of companies expect their workforce to grow. No, not surprising as we grow out of the pandemic. And actually quite concerning, given how companies have generally lent in to support employees over this time. Over half, about half of companies are experiencing higher than usual resignation. So it does show a fairly, and although unemployment rate are relatively low, so it's showing a fairly dire situation. One bright light in all this, Joe, is has the TA profession ever been more important in the Australian context for the last, I don't know how many years? It's peak TA at the moment.
I'm hearing from a lot of people that this is absolutely the worst and most challenging market they've ever faced, and that includes people who, have been in the talent profession for 30 or 40 years. So, look, I think now would be a lovely time to bring in our panel of TA insiders joining us for today.
Yeah, fantastic though. I reckon it's a great time to bring our awesome guests in. So firstly, Allegra Moore, the Talent Director at Cognizant, and then Laura White, the Head of Talent at Papercut Software, two fantastic participants. And as we've put it, our version of David and Goliath. I'm not sure that's a great scenario given where Goliath went, but I'm going to head to you, Allegra, and just talk
No,
about
no arrows being slung, Laura.
just talk about the size and scope of your company and the team at Cognizant, if you would.
Yeah, sure. So hi, Craig, Joe, and hi, everyone on the call. Thanks so much for having me today. So obviously, I'm the talent director at Cognizant. We're a global organisation of 300,000 people. To put that into perspective, the ANZ region is around about 1,300 FTE with an additional anywhere between 1 to 200 contractors. If you go back to the beginning of the year, I had a team of 6. And from kind of April through to August, we expanded that out to 15. And we're still looking for a couple more.
Oh, wow. Anyone on the line today in the market for a role, you know who to turn to.
You know who to reach out to. It's a bit of an advertising flow, Joe.
Yeah, it's incredible growth, Allegra, and really pleased to have you here with your breadth of knowledge and understanding of the market. Laura, how about, as our David, how about you at Papercut?
Yeah, thanks, Craig. Thanks, Joe. Great to join Allegra on the panel today, and welcome everyone. Yeah, Papercut definitely is more of the David, but it's all love here. There's no arrows being swung our way. So Papercut has been steadily growing over the last number of years. We're closing in on around 250 employees now, and likely to hit closer to 300 by this time next year. We're based here in Melbourne in terms of head office, but we're actually in 8 different countries around the world with 3 core offices, one in the UK, one in the US, and of course Melbourne. So our TA team is 3 at the moment, and we are also looking for an additional person. So another advertising ploy there as well.
There we go.
Always resourcing. And Joe, Globalization Partners actually provides a solution called an employer of record solution, where we hire people in countries where our clients have no legal jurisdiction, no legal entity. So they don't need to set up legal, tax, and other HR functions. We hire and then assign that person back to them and have HR and legal support in country for those people. So we support them like they're inside your own business. But we'll talk about that a little later, no doubt. Let's get on with the TA stuff.
Yeah, that's right. And look, we've got a question here in the chat. What is the source of the data shown? So earlier, I think it was in September, we wrote and created a state of talent acquisition survey. It was a very long one. We thank everyone online. I know Sandra, who's online today, I think filled it out 3 times because she kept having tech issues. So thanks so much for daring with that and actually completing it. She was super keen to try and win that $500 prize. And yeah, we looked at the results from 144 different talent teams. We did have more people respond, but we had multiple responses from the same team. So we just took the most complete data set, or the position that we thought would be more across the responses there. So the data represented is just per talent team, unless we're talking at the end of the session today, we'll be talking about health and wellbeing and the energy of people in the talent profession, and we did include everybody within that. So look, with such challenging conditions, I know that many of you have been very, very busy to try and either meet demand or reset expectations. When thinking about meeting demand, we really sort of considered, the difference in effort and budget required to meet business needs is really, really different now. And when you think about Uber's method of rate increases at peak times, if I'm wanting to get home from on the city on a Saturday night, sometimes I'm paying that 30% premium to get home. So, the ability to build in a degree of difficulty cost to help you scale your budget, or just get busy resetting expectations. So, Allegra, I know when we spoke, you said that you have been busy resetting expectations since April, was it?
Yeah, that's right, Joe. So I'll just put a bit of context around it. So I joined Cognizant in January, with the mandate, I guess, of redefining the talent functions. So when I sort of sat back and looked at what I thought 2021 might bring, although it totally blew my expectations in terms of what actually happened, I realised that in order to meet business demand, we needed to reset expectations, because if we always do what we've always done, we'll always get what we always got, as the old saying goes. I spent my first 3 months talking to the business, meeting with stakeholders, meeting with leadership, not just locally, but also globally, in order to talk through what we needed to do to get the numbers that we needed to get to, right? So as a consultancy, we knew we would have to hire 500 people in 2021 to meet new demand, and another 150 to 200 to backfill attrition, because that's just the market. So we're on track to hire about 730 by end of December FTE, which does, obviously contractors on top. So it was about resetting those expectations to meet the business demand. It was about educating hiring managers, again, if you always do what you've always done. And those conversations went really well. And the reason they went really well was because I'm very lucky to work in an organisation where leadership is very supportive. Talent is important, and it's number one, and it's the top of everyone's list of talking points.
And feedback from the business, I mean, when you started resetting those expectations in April, has the tune changed a little? I mean, did they take it as seriously then as they're taking it now?
Oh, look, there might have been a bit of lip service to start with, Joe. There might have been a bit of, oh, okay, do we really have to do this? But I can tell you that by June, July, when it really became apparent that, resignations were there, attrition was going to get higher, people were taking jobs, and then leaving after a month to go somewhere else, that, the conversations became, dare I say it, real. And now we have regular meetings just about, are we matching what we said of resetting expectations, and are we meeting this business demand?
And Laura, so other side of the scale, smaller, dare I say, possibly more sort of nimble organisation, very direct line to, the CEO, an organisation of less than 300 people. What have you been busy on? Has one been more dominant than the other in terms of, we're going to pull out all stops to meet demand and here's what we need to do it, or let's reset our expectations?
Yeah, I mean, it definitely started out earlier in the year around resetting expectations. We had, like many businesses, gone through a couple of periods of a hiring freeze as COVID hit and, begun to get much larger than any of us expected. And when we began hiring again, it was very cautious. And then all of a sudden it grew in momentum and it snowballed, and, we're hiring and hiring and hiring and hiring. And at the same time, people are leaving the business. So resetting expectations around what we could achieve as a small team, definitely, but something that we had to do closer to the middle of the year was really influence the salary review of our current employees, and, provide that market data to say, not only are we unable to attract current employees at this salary, but you're going to make our job a heck of a lot harder if people keep leaving. So the business made a really conscious decision to focus on increasing the salary to meet the market demand, especially of our engineers. And then the team did a lot of really deep partnership work with our hiring leads around our processes, because people had so many opportunities thrown at them. What used to be the norm of asking someone to complete a take-home code exercise, we were being laughed at. I've had 4 of those, this week. You're the 4th. I'm not doing it. So we had to pivot, and we had to change, everything about how we attract, how we, go through the interview process, and the expectations around our hiring managers of how many people we could deliver at any one time.
It goes to show, doesn't it, really how each side, the talent team and the candidate market actually change. I mean, there's a real sense when people are so keen for a role and they know there's a lot of competition, they will go to almost any point. But mentally, internally, they're thinking, I don't want to do this exercise. This is not cool. but they're still doing it because it's so competitive. And now we're actually really seeing the no filter. We're seeing how far talent teams are really willing to flex in terms of what that minimum process looks like, and what candidates actually really think of what the process used to be. Well, let's talk now about budget and resources. So one of the questions we asked in the survey is how well funded you believe you are. And we saw that, 11, almost 12% of talent teams say we have abundant funding to do whatever it is that we need. It was nice to see about 48% to say they had adequate funding. But I think the surprising thing in this market is that talent professionals are facing the greatest talent crisis of their careers, but 40% of them are not adequately funded to face that challenge. And I can almost feel the pain that those teams are going through. In terms of team size, we heard earlier that Allegra has been busy doubling the size of her team. 61% of teams grew. I thought that might be a bit higher. 33% stayed the same and 6 reduced in size. That probably goes back, maybe earlier somebody said, who are these kind of, what was it, 9% of people who said they're finding it easier than pre-pandemic to hire people. Maybe the people reducing team size. But mega teams, teams of 71 recruiters or more all grew by up to 25%. So from a budget perspective, Laura, I know when we spoke, you were saying, look, we're still kind of recovering as a business from having this downturn, lockdown and the effects of that. So it's not so easy just to go and ask for an abundant amount of money, as a smaller organisation. What does the budget conversation look like? Who owns that, and do you kind of put in a pitch for what you need, or do they say, here's what we can afford, do your best?
It's a little bit of both. I'd say pre-pandemic we were probably in the adequate bucket, and we were going okay. But it also depends on what you mean by adequately funded. I have always needed additional resources, and I've been very blessed this year to have the support of the business to start bringing in additional resources and growing our team size. However, the pool of money that I have to do the things we'd like to do has reduced. So in terms of how that budget process happens, it is a consultation with the finance team as they're putting things together. But at the end of the day, we have to look at what our profitability targets are and what our revenue goals are. If we have to make cuts, we have to generally make cuts across all of the departments. And talent, unfortunately, was one of them this year. We're looking at a budget that is less than what we had in 2019, and we're facing a far more difficult market to recruit in. So yes, we are small, and we do rely on things like our employer brand, to get the message out there. We're not able to do big campaigns, so we're really having to focus on word of mouth, referrals, organic social sharing, et cetera, et cetera. So some of our plans are on ice, but I totally get it. The business is being cautious, and the one thing that they've always done is protect our people. We've not had to make any redundancies, et cetera. So we'll forge ahead, but hopefully we can get back into that adequate bucket soon.
And Allegra, you and I had a conversation around, cost center versus profit center. Most talent functions operate as a cost center. And it was funny, in the same day, I spoke to another talent director at your level, and you were saying, we really want to move over to a profit center. The other talent leader is currently operating in a profit center and said the business is not mature enough to handle chargebacks. We are going to, although it provides me with so much benefit around owning my own budget, I can spend what I want, we're going to have to change back to being a cost center because it's driving kind of unfortunate behavior. So share that kind of thinking and journey in terms of, the cost center versus profit center question.
Yeah, so you're right. We operate as a cost center. I'm lucky. I've operated as a profit center in a previous role with another global, where I was 2 years into a 6-year tenure there, and we changed it to a profit center. And it was a really big eye opener for the business, right? All of a sudden, they're being charged for what happens, whether it be advertising or hires and what have you. And it really was a big education piece. I'm not saying as an organisation we're mature enough to do that now, because I don't think we are. We're still settling into the changes that we've put in place in 2021. But I would hope as we kind of march towards 2023 and start to think about budgets, which I know is funny, but we'll be doing that in June next year, that we start to have those really open conversations. You know, at the moment, talent in my organisation pays for referrals. That's new for me. I've never operated under that model. So, you know, I want to start pushing that out to the business. Agency costs at the moment get charged to talent. That's going to be started to push that out to the business. I mean, we've got adequate funding. Are we abundant? No, but have I not gotten anything that I asked for this year? I don't think so. I've probably had to taper down expectations somewhere along the line. But, you know, I could have grown my team of 15 to 25, but I had to kind of stop and say to myself in September, October, I can keep adding people, but if there are not people out there to put into roles, you know, what's the point? So we started to talk about remodeling the team of 15 and how we do that, but I still will add a few next year.
Well, skills mix is certainly going to be coming up later in the slides. And I see a couple of questions coming in here. We do have some slides coming up about resignations. Obviously, we cannot have a state of TA survey and report without touching on the Great Resignation. And yeah, we will come back to those. If you would like to ask a question to the panelists, there's actually a separate Q&A box. So this is the chat that you can kind of communicate with other people online. But there'll also be a Q&A button in there, and then you can ask. We are going to stop mid event, ask some questions about some of the topics that we've covered. Then we'll move forward with the rest of the topics, and we'll have some more Q&A at the end there as well. All right, over to executive focus. I think this is fitting given the budget conversation.
Yeah, it sure is, Joe. And just as a glass half full sort of person, I'm thinking that around 60% of people either adequately or abundantly resourced is pretty damn good in my view. But nonetheless, we have to push on, right? So this comes back to that original discussion we had, and the survey question was around the executive level of focus on TA, and it's actually quite good news that over 90% of talent teams are reporting that their executive have recognised TA as being important, 62% significantly important. That's great news. I suppose I would like to then come to our experts here and ask Allegra, you know, in our discussions, you've said talent isn't just the TA issue, team's problem, so to speak, or requirement, but there's a requirement to be resourcing for everyone. But just wonder, how have you managed to turn around the TA function and to get that executive engagement, and what tips and tricks can you provide to the groups on this call?
Yeah, well, it's a bit like when we were having a conversation a little bit earlier, Craig, you know, when, you know, you say everyone's in sales, I say everybody's in recruitment. It doesn't matter whether it's the talent team, the business units, the executive team, the leadership team. Again, I go back to, you know, I'm fortunate. I have a great leadership team that engaged with me the minute I walked into the business. Now, I appreciate some people, you know, probably don't have that and don't see that. But having said that, I still had to work hard in order to put together, you know, statistics and data. We're a very data-driven organisation for obvious reasons, as to the hows and whys that talent needed to come, you know, to the top of the screen. I find it interesting that you know, we started talking about the Great Resignation, I guess, from a social media aspect, what, around maybe August, September, I don't know. We started talking about that. We started having those conversations when I joined in January. You know, what does 2021 look like? Are we going to see an influx? You know, borders are closed. You know, it's harder to bring people in. What knock-on effect is that going to have? So I sat down in my first 3 months and had a lot of very raw and very honest conversations with the leadership team around what that would look like. So again, lucky to work with people that are, understanding. But as I said, I had to work hard to get that.
But just drilling a little bit into what you said there, which is you needed to provide facts to your executive teams. With facts, you get response. So it can't be, fluffy. Is that how you got that buy-in?
Yeah, absolutely. So if I looked back on the current stats of the organisation before I joined, some of the consultants were delivering 100, 200 roles a year. It was about sitting down and saying, okay, a great consultant can manage this amount of roles at any one time, and a great consultant can hire this many. And this is what a good consultant looks like. We can't have the expectation that our people are going to be managing 100-200 roles each. And I know there are a lot of organisations out there that expect that. I'm not going to tell fibs. When I walked into the organisation, we had 1,000 open roles. And again, it was the conversation of going back through. Is it this one work? Is this attrition? Is this hopeful? Is this for a bid? So we put a prioritization into place for sort of what we called a DP1 through to a DP4. If it was one or attrition, it was a DP1, and then obviously everything else fell after. So it was about, and it goes back again to resetting expectations to meet the business demand.
Yeah, that's awesome. And Laura, just coming to you then, one of the comments there was from Con is that, sure, provide data and to your executive team for real information to get their buy-in, but then also provide, I'm going to read into his comments, have accountability of the TA team in their KPIs of what they'll actually produce, and that balance will be a way to connect with the exec. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I think that for our executive team, similarly, we're very blessed that they have a large focus on talent, and I think it comes down to our focus on people in terms of our culture and how strong that is. From an executive team level, it's really important just to provide full transparency and visibility so that they know, what we're dealing with on a daily basis. Very fortunate that our CEO is a part of the CEO Institute, so he's in talking to other CEOs and what challenges they're facing. He's very proud to say that even though our turnover's increased, it's nowhere near the other CEOs and all those sorts of things. So we actually have, I have a monthly spot on the executive meeting that they have weekly. I go once a month, talk through what we're facing, how many roles that we've got, how many we're able to fill, constantly back to what we were saying, resetting those expectations, talking about market size, talking about how salaries are still moving, they haven't stopped. What we reviewed in July needs to be continuously updated. And we look at our Radford data, which is, what we use to benchmark every time there's new data input into the system. So yes, we hit them with every fact that we can. And then we're also building dashboards so that we can deliver that on a more regular basis, because we just, even though we're a nimble organization, we almost need to be more nimble than ever at the moment.
Understand. That's fantastic. Joe, perhaps we need to move on. So that's great on the executive, but more thought around that needs to happen for sure. Let's carry on.
And look, I am conscious that we are getting some questions in here, but so for instance, on referral fees and salaries and those kind of things, we will come back and address those once we get to that slide. One of the things I was keen to understand is talent teams, if they're moving towards a full advisory service. Now, we kind of took that to be you're involved in role configuration, internal mobility, the external market, obviously, upskilling and reskilling, automation and outsourcing. So what we found out was 20% of talent teams said that they operate as purely an external market service. They get the role, they go to market. 34% of talent teams said they are operating already at a full advisory service. And then we've got this group in this middle, people that kind of said, yep, we do external market, but we also incorporate mobility. And, 9 of the 67 teams said Several of them said that they do some workforce planning, some didn't. So they're kind of, that emerging sort of market moving towards advisory. The interesting thing is when we correlated that across to the talent teams that said we align our TA strategy with business drivers, organizational goals. We've got workforce planning operating at desired levels. Only 9 of the 67 had that happening. So we've got this real mix in the middle in terms of where people are at. And, we also wanted to know about, talent acquisition and talent management moving closer together.
Yeah, that's fascinating, isn't it? This move to actually, it seems to bring the TA and the TM, the talent acquisition and talent management function together. We haven't quite won that drive yet, but certainly it's moving that direction. So over a third of organisations had aligned those two groups together, TA and TM, and 55% said that TM is in a broader HR team. What's interesting actually is that 9% of companies said they have no specific TA function, which would be interesting to this group.
No defined talent management service.
No specific nominated service. It might be worthwhile, Joe, at this time just to reiterate for the team as to the numbers, the numbers of people that were in the survey and the size of those in those different segments too.
Yeah, so that was 144 individual talent teams and quite a somewhat even split. You could say it's close enough to being, 1/3 of each. So below 500 workforce, 500 to 5,000 workforce, and 5,000 and above workforce. And this question really came out of a poll that I did on LinkedIn a little while ago to sort of say, where is your heart at? Do you feel like you are part of HR, or do you feel like you are uniquely talent? What kind of, are you in the HR ecosystem and we're all one big happy family, or are you really quite removed and you're like, I'm not in HR, I am. Talent is my brand and identity. And Laura, I know that in a small business, you need to wear all the hats and do all the things, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think it's really important for TA and TM to be part of the HR ecosystem. I think at the end of the day, we're talking about the life cycle of the people in the business, right? And we operate under the same banner of people experience at Papercut, but I think from an industry perspective, we need to offer more than just talent acquisition where we can and where it makes sense for the business. We're investing all of this time in building relationships with our candidates. We've got the ultimately successful candidate who comes into the business, a deep understanding. I'm sure many people on the call, have had someone join the business and they start asking you HR questions week 1, week 2, month 6, because they like you and they've got a relationship with you. So we're in a really good position to be able to support those people through their internal career at that company. So if you can, I think why not? It's a really good use of our skills and it's a really good way to stay connected with the business. And then you can input in those broader strategic conversations like workforce planning, like capability management. You can influence internal mobility and all of those wonderful things, which overall influences engagement. So I think that just signals a greater ROI for talent teams.
And, we've got Anna online has said, I work in a team called TLC.
I love that.
I love that, right? Talent, learning and capability. And so we are now sort of seeing, particularly with, that internal talent market, people are focused on total talent. Then it makes sense that they're saying, where does capability and where does talent management sit? Is it more aligned to talent acquisition or is it more aligned to HR? I've sat in a HR team where business partners were on one side of me, recruitment was on the other, I'm in the capability team. And let me tell you, there wasn't a great deal of communication in amongst that group. I had to start a lunchtime power walk kind of, group just to kind of try and get everyone talking to each other It was an extremely siloed workforce. Now, talent delivery. We asked all of our participants to say, on a scale of 1 to 10, tell us, how do you go at delivering the right talent at the right time? And it came in at 7.3, which is quite good. The concerning thing, though, was when we then asked later in the survey about their pipeline for future supply, it bottomed right out to 4.4. There wasn't a lot of confidence in future supply from those groups. And I don't think that Neil Gunning would mind me identifying him as the author of this quote, and that it is no longer a talent pool, it is a talent puddle. So, Laura, you were sort of saying that, everyone's moving so fast, the pipeline essentially becomes redundant. That's your quote. We had such a big focus in the last few years about, talent communities and talent pipelines and talent pools. Where is that at now?
Yeah, we're basically at the point where we're pipelining for our open roles. That's how fast we're moving at the moment. We can't just advertise and expect people to apply. So we're out headhunting every single role. We are identifying the candidates, we are convincing them to apply, and we're having to do that really strong relationship management to keep them engaged in the process, often while other recruiters are messaging them in the meantime, also trying to convince them. The other thing for us at being a smaller business is coming out of COVID. I know it's everyone's most hated topic, but we don't have the workforce planning down pat. So we don't really understand what we should be pipelining for any further than about 3 to 6 months in advance at the moment. Tie that in with resignations. We could have a very abundant technical support team one day, and then 3 weeks, go by, and all of a sudden we don't, and resignations are coming through. So we just need to pivot as much as we can. It's really keeping us on our toes. I know that there's many people in the TA community who are absolutely exhausted, and pray for the day where we can spend a few hours a week on LinkedIn just pipelining for future roles, but it's not now.
And Allegra, when it comes to talent delivery, you were saying, confidence of future supply. I mean, you're actually offering roles, they're being accepted, people are starting pre-boarding, and was it 1 in 3 pulling out before the first day?
Yeah, it would be 1 in 3 to 4. I mean, I haven't done the data or the facts, which I'm sure would disappoint leadership, but it would be 1 in 3 to 4, right? But what they're doing is they're accepting roles, they're going through the onboarding process, which is no mean feat in our organisation, and they're actually pulling out on average on the Thursday or the Friday before they're starting on the Monday. Wow. And a lot of the times my team are waking up on a Monday morning to an email that says, hi, I was supposed to join you today, but I've taken something else. Oh. And then of course it sends everything into tailspins because you've got employee IDs, you've sent out laptops, you've sent out whatever, tools of the trade, whatever you need. And then it's a case of scrambling to get them all back. So that is happening 1 out of every 4 times, and it comes down to salary, right? We offer good salaries, I believe, but we're being pipped at the post by anywhere between $40,000 to $70,000 more.
Wow, it's significant, significant cash, isn't it? And who was it telling me earlier about $100,000 sign-on bonus?
Oh, yes, that was me. So we lost a candidate, and look, granted, we lost the candidate right up front, so we didn't go through the onboarding or anything. Where we offered a candidate above market rate. We really wanted to secure them, and another organisation offered them a $200,000 sign-on bonus. So $100,000 when they'd been there for 3 months, that was non-repayable, and then another $100,000 at the end of 12 months.
Sign me up.
Right, you're shaking your head. Yeah, get us all a job.
Yeah, but what do you say to those people? You say, I wish you every success and happiness, because that's life-changing.
Yeah, and I agree, Allegra, but the one thing I'd say is a long-term hiring manager as opposed to TA person, that I've had that happen a number of times over my career, particularly in the onboarding phase or soon after someone comes along. And when it's happened, that's never worked well for that candidate, because it's a small, we said it's a puddle, it's a small pool in Australia. And the number of times I've re-engaged with that person over time through interviews, etc., and it wasn't a good outcome, frankly. So one has to be very careful about how you go about your life too.
I call that my talent pipeline for 2023.
Yeah.
Yeah, indeed.
Well, we got a lovely private message here to you, Allegra. Somebody offering you their deepest sympathy. I think this is recruiters all over the nation. Their hearts are breaking right now. And Jasmine's topped you. She's saying that I know a developer who had 150K stay bonus, a retention bonus, and if he stays for 2 years, he gets an additional 150 to be loved, right?
Yeah.
All of a sudden they're understanding value. All right, so I think that leads nicely into salary wars. So we've got 83% of companies yielding to candidate salary demands. 17% of teams are saying they are not going to entertain salary demands. Allegra, you have one foot in both camps. Initially, you were guilty as charged, right?
Guilty as charged. So when it all kicked off, and in my mind, I don't even know when it all kicked off. Was it May? Was it April? Did it really hit in July, or has it just been something that's happened all year but sort of reached a crescendo? Yeah, we were guilty as charged. Of course we were. I think you'd be hard pressed anybody out there to say that they weren't. But then you kind of have to put the skates on and have to have conversations internally around what else can we do. Do we offer, retention bonuses? Do we offer sign-on bonuses? We can't keep pricing ourselves out of the market. Like, I'll give you an example. We offered somebody a very, very good salary a few months ago of 165K, and they knocked us back. Turns out one of our customers said, hey, we really think we would like that person to come in here and work on our account. And so the person started having conversations with us again, and in 3 months, they had gone from that 160, 170 up to 200, 210. And then you have to make the decision.
And 160 was already kind of the inflated offer, right?
Yep. So if you go back, I don't know, 12, 18 months, it would have been 130, I suppose, for that type of role. So did we participate? Yes, we did. Did we put the brakes on? Absolutely. And we're looking at other ways to do that. Having said that, we've had to realign, salary bands and what have you.
Well, and this is the consideration, right? Because everyone's worked so hard to make sure that they, have pay equity, and they don't have a female and diverse pay gap in the organisation. And then you've got groups of people, like, who knows who they are and how closely we're paying attention to the people who are, aggressively negotiating, and what it does to, I guess, those other goals. Laura, what's it like in scale-up land? Are people being as aggressive with the smaller organisations?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And similar to Allegra's point, we had to, help realign expectations internally and influence what our salary bands are. But I just sat back and went, this is surely not sustainable. We cannot possibly participate in this. We're very transparent with our business on our performance, and we are a profitable business and we are doing well, but we want to invest in our future, and we can't have a lengthy future if we start paying you all 30, 40, 50% on top of what you're already earning, and we're still paying out our annual bonuses. Like, come on, guys. So there was a few people that we lost earlier in the year, and then we upped the salaries of, like I said, focusing on the engineering teams. But I just don't understand how it could continue, and I've been waiting for the market to steady, and it keeps slowly creeping, especially in the tech scene. It doesn't seem to have completely steadied yet.
Well, we had a couple of questions in here which I think we'll address now, which is what kind of referral bonuses firstly are people paying, and if you're at home, feel free to type if you want to share that intel. What kind of referral bonuses you're offering to internal staff at the moment, Allegra?
Probably not enough, Jo, and that's why we've realigned them in the last few months. So look, we've got a couple of skill sets that were niche years ago, and if they were niche then they're super niche now. So we've looked at those and we've increased referral bonuses. We've put less rules, I guess, around it in terms of, must be a resident, must work here, et cetera, et cetera. And we've doubled those, and that's seen a significant increase in driving referrals through the business. I mean, referrals are really important, and we talked about that the other day. If you're receiving referrals into your business, for the most part, it means your people are happy to say to their friends, their network, their family, hey, come and have a chat to us, we're okay.
And it's a social proof, as opposed to, this recruiter could be telling me anything, really selling the culture hard. You've got the inside track, you've got somebody that you know there, so it's a social proof recommendation. What about sign-on bonuses? Have you been offering many of those? Are they for specific roles only?
Yes, I guess for the more niche and more specific roles, yes, they are there. But it's, you put together a mini business case as to why.
Sure.
And I mean, not going to tell fibs. One person in my team that I onboarded got a sign-on bonus,
right?
Because I recognised at the time, did we need that skill set? Did we need that specialty skill? Yes, we did. Could I necessarily pay that person what everybody else in the market was, offering? Probably not. And more to the point, I didn't want to engage in that. So the way around that was to invite them to join us by saying, hey, and here's a sign-on bonus that's yours.
Laura, sign-on bonuses, referral bonuses?
No sign-on bonuses. We haven't really felt the need to participate in that as of yet, but I wouldn't put it out of the question. We have kind of negotiated on visa transfer fees, kind of said, to stay within our budget, we're going to have to offer you this salary in order to pay for your visa transfer. So that's come up. But yeah, similar with referrals, we doubled it specifically for our engineers, but it didn't result in a lot. And actually, if I reflect on potentially why, is because some of those hiring pauses that we went through over the kind of first 18 months of the pandemic, a lot of our engineers who are still with the business are very long timers, and they have referred their entire network over the years. And so we're now starting to see referrals trickle back in as we've brought new people in. They've been here for 3 to 6 months, and they're going, okay, yep, I absolutely want to refer my network to this business.
It's I think nothing's off the table at the moment, is it? And
it's cheaper than an agency placement, put it that way. So if you can get away with one less agency placement, my advice would be absolutely double your referral bonus.
Indeed. And look, these things are going a bit bananas because we have this restrictive, captive talent market. But I think one of the great things to come out of the pandemic is the concept of talent anywhere, which is really your area of expertise, Craig.
Yeah, it sure is. I think we'll get to retention bonuses later on as well. So it was a great discussion, that frankly, and it leads to an interesting view of the numbers here, right? So about 30% of people are either looking to hire people overseas or are looking to overcome the barriers to hire people overseas for talent. There are other use cases, as Laura talked about, bringing folk from overseas into Australia, but securing their services where they are until you can get them in, or in fact to test their skills. Now that's where globalization partners and our service comes in, without this being a big advertisement. I'll talk about that in a minute, but actually looking at these wars of sign-on bonuses and so on, it is surprising that people, given the last 18 months of working remotely, haven't clued on to what a lot of really smart, nimble businesses have done, which is we have access to a much greater pool. We can make that pond into a pool, or that puddle into a pool, if you like, by going outside. Sure, we have to change how we manage people. Sure, we have to think this through. But what we do at Globalization Partners effectively allows that to hire people offshore. Laura, you've used this type of service in the past. Maybe you could describe a little bit of that.
Yeah, full disclosure, we are avid GP fans, and I actually was introduced to Globalisation Partners when we were trying to move into the Singapore network. And I saw the pure fear on the finance team's face when we yet again were trying to move into another region, and they had just gone through, a few months of hell establishing a legal entity in Germany to hire there. So we thought, let's explore other options, and we engaged Globalisation Partners. We've now got 3 employees through GP in Singapore. But the other thing is that it then opens up all of these opportunities when people come to you and say that they want to make life decisions and life changes. So we've had people move back to New Zealand for personal reasons, move back to France for personal reasons, and we've been able to look at potentially entering new markets. And even in Singapore, not being bound by Singapore, but Sandra on the call is super excited about a candidate who's based out of Hong Kong, and there's a potential there that we can actually bring that person in without having to have the stress. So, but to the quote on the screen, there are so many of our employees are desperate to get back to their families. The Australian government has shut them out of their home countries for so long, and in order to retain these people, there just has to be a solution. Because if we let everyone who's here go, and then we're not getting the influx of new people coming in, the war for talent's just going to get worse, heaven forbid.
Yeah, and I must say that that comment there, I love that statement. If you can do your job anywhere, someone anywhere can do your job. That's a reality, and we've known that for some time, but no one believed it. Frankly, now people do over this last 18 months because we've lived that experience. So we actually know we can work remotely. This doesn't need to just be in using EOR, Employer of Record Services. You may have entities around the world where you can support people to move from one country to another. It does scream out for issues around, working out salary versus where you live, etc. There are issues around that for sure. But as you say, if you want to support people, you need to be flexible in this market. And this is the juxtaposition to the war for talent in our little puddle, as you spoke to. So for timing, I think we should move on there, unless Allegra, you have a particular comment around this?
No, all good.
Okay.
All right, so time for a little Q&A. I know some of you have already been popping them into the chat. Scott has asked how many participated in the survey that had a negative. Scott, I'm going to have to check the data because I can't remember off the top of my head, and my laptop is otherwise indisposed at the moment, but I will get back to you on how many mega teams there were. There was a pretty good spread of different organisation sizes, and obviously, I know the likes of CBA and ANZ and all of those teams have, well over probably almost double the minimum requirement there, which was 71 team members. So any questions that don't relate to flexibility, the Great Resignation, diversity, talent tech, health and wellbeing, because we have all of that coming up next.
So there's a comment there, Joe, right at the end from Jasmine around, have we seen a globalization of salaries? And maybe that's something I could respond to. It's very interesting. So people in the past have gone offshore for labour arbitrage. We've seen huge call centres, low-level IT work, etc., etc. That pendulum is swinging, and this democratisation of roles leads to a democratisation of salaries to some extent. So we have seen that, for example, sure, we pay good salaries in Australia, but in the US, I was on a medical conference just recently, medical sciences, life sciences, and so on. And in that market, US companies are coming to Australia to hire people remotely and offering much higher salaries. We're in a global market here, so you should see that we have an opportunity to go out to find talent and perhaps get slightly lower salaries in some markets, possibly higher in others, but you need to juxtapose quality versus salary, but also realize that your teams may be being pinged, if you like, from people not just in our little puddle, but globally as well.
That's it. Well, look, we might head along. We've only got a few minutes left and we've still got a few slides to go. But we did ask organisations around flexibility. Is it still considered a work perk, or is it the new normal? So, look, it was really good to see that, you know, flexibility by the majority is just to be considered a way of working. It's not a perk. It is for everyone. There were still a few organisations that considered it a perk, but everyone could have it. A few less that it was a perk, but only a few very special people had the privilege. And a very small percentage that said, look, you can have flex or you can have cash, you can't have both, because it really truly is, you know, a benefit. We asked people about, you know, returning to the office and where people would work. And the majority said, you know, we will have a company roster. You can do both, but we're going to tell you how often and which days. But there was a lot of organisations allowing people some personal choice and autonomy of that. And I think, you know, Allegra, you were telling me, you know, flexibility is the first question a candidate asks. Salary is what makes the choice for them. But that just tells us now that flex is a hygiene factor. So it has to be there. It's very, very important. But essentially, you know, you don't get a look in without it, but the salaries where the final crunch is coming down to. And look, I think for some companies, you know, I really like Adam Grant's take on this. He talks about, you know, do you run an individual race? Are you in a relay, or are you in a team sport? And depending on those things, you know, if you're running an individual race in the world, you can work from wherever you want, whenever you want. Relay work obviously takes a lot more planning and collaboration in terms of schedules and timelines and how you do that. And then you've got the team sport stuff. So I think there's a lot of considerations in terms of the type of work that you do, and who else is involved in terms of, you know, where you want to work, and also considerations like if you go into the office and you have all the great vibes of the day, but you spend the entire day online because everyone else is at home, you know, what is that experience of being in the office like? There's no right or wrong, or there's no one size fits all answer here. Now, we're finally at the Great Resignation.
Yes.
I think everyone I've spoken to and I'm reading to online, they're just all thumbs down. They're like, stop talking about Great Resignation. We're over it. You know, it's a beat up. But Craig, as we know, the survey doesn't lie.
Well, indeed. So, I mean, the numbers there are quite interesting. And I mean, to try and speed this up, because we haven't got a lot of time, I would say we should ask our guests around retention, right? Because this actually points to just that. So, Allegra, what are you doing to do as best as you can to hold the employees that you have? Businesses have leaned in so heavily to our employees over this last time, and yet we're still seeing this move.
Yeah, well, look, do dollars come into play? Yes, of course they do. Do retention bonuses come into play? Absolutely. But it's about, for us, it was about at the beginning of the year, realigning and asking our associates what they wanted. You know, being a consultancy, a very high percentage of our people sit on a client side. So they tend to feel that they are the client, they're not necessarily cognizant. So, you know, we looked at how do we change that? How do we change that perception, and how do we get them more involved? Every business unit has a town hall. Our CEO, Jane, visits on site on a very regular basis and hosts open meetings where people are encouraged to, you know, what do you want more of? What do you want less of? What can we do more? Look, it doesn't just come down to the dollars, it comes down to the engagement as well.
Indeed. Laura, do you see the same thing?
Yeah, absolutely. Like communication, having transparency in the business, consulting with your employees, but also to what we were talking about earlier, if you have the ability to somehow impact the talent management side of things, people want to know, you know, what the future looks like for them in that business, because there's too many enticing opportunities being thrown their way. So you have to get in front of it. So things like stay interviews as well as stay bonuses, I think are really, really important. And you need to find out what's going through people's minds.
Indeed. And look, we're seeing here, as part of the survey, we didn't just collect the data. I also phoned a lot of people and did a lot of interviews with them. And, we're seeing quotes like resignation rates have skyrocketed, demand is 5 times what it was pre-COVID. So I think that the takeaway here, and look, we're sharing a much bigger, broader report that covers even far more topics than we're covering today. And that is that, will there be a great resignation? Yes, for some. Will there be for others? Not really. It's in the US, we're seeing there are particular like hospitality and leisure services, they're really suffering from great resignation, not so much professional services. Here, there's obviously huge changes around IT and tech. So it's not going to be a common shared experience for all organisations and industries. Look, we asked around diversity, and I was a little surprised really to find out that there were sort of so few diversity initiatives in place. I mean, most of it was really around women in male-dominated fields, very important. We had Torres Strait Islander and Aboriginal programs. And so forth. I know one of the interviews I did talked around the prospect of a second chance program. So people who had done time in prison, had rehabilitated, been released, needing to get them back being active members of society and community, and working really hard on that. But we asked people when we looked at the difference between, how do you rate your talent strategy versus what those organisations did on diversity. I mean, there were organisations that said, yes, talent strategy is a 6 out of 10, it's not so bad. But they didn't see DEI as being an essential feature of their talent offering, which was quite interesting. Talent technology. Craig, what did we learn here?
Look, so maybe just while we're talking about this, if those are still around, which is fantastic, thanks for staying. If you could just tell us from 1 to 10, how well do you believe you partner with your tech providers to get the most out of your tech stacks? But this is a bit of a problem area, right, Joe? That see that only 28% of teams rated themselves as 7 plus. On partnering, get the most out of their technology, and less than half reported that their talent technology performed well for them. So this seems to be an issue at the moment.
Yeah, indeed. And look, I asked this question because last year there were a lot of people, not giving great reports and feedback on their talent tech stack. And, my next question was, well, how strongly do you partner? Because a lot of the tech vendors were very quick to tell me, these guys just don't partner with us. They don't throw enough resources at implementation. They then don't have anyone working on continual optimization, training of new people as they're coming in. There's just not enough resources. And there's one very well-known talent technology that a lot of talent teams are being forced to have. And, there was one person that said, oh, actually, we don't mind it. We've actually made it work for us. But I think they had about a dozen developers working on it for 9 months in order to get it right. So depends how far you're willing to go. In terms of underutilized tech tools, we were quite surprised, like in this market, not a lot of people using AI sourcing, the likes of HireTool and those kind of tools. Programmatic advertising, I will talk a little bit later in the recommendation pages about this, but again, not being widely used. Recruitment chatbots, for all the hype a couple of years ago, still not many implemented. A lot more recruitment marketing, but still, not a sort of overwhelming sort of number there. Now, this is our second last slide. We've got health and wellbeing.
Yeah, I'd love feedback from Laura and Allegra while we ask people, if they wouldn't mind actually stating how they're ensuring that their talent teams are sustainable. Right now, it seems to be a bit fraught, right? And we're at peak work. How do you keep them going apart from Tim Tams and Mars bars, right? Allegra, what do you do?
To ask them, are you okay? So
Yeah.
my team work the hours that they need to work to get their job done. There is no such thing as a 9 to 5. Having said that, is there our stakeholders traditionally work that kind of 8:30 to 5. So if you're not going to be available, nominate someone who is. I've quite often Friday afternoon at 2 o'clock, I'll say to some of them, hey, what's going on? They'll go, oh, I'm just doing admin, doing the mop up. And I say, go, because it's still going to be there Monday. Or someone will say, oh, I need to take half a day off to do this. And I say, just take it on me, just do it. They're still doing their work. They're still producing what they need to produce. So it's not like I monitor where they are and what they're doing. I don't.
Yeah.
If they're not performing, you soon know about it.
Well, from the numbers, Laura, it seems like you guys are doing a very good job at this. Do you see that? How are you keeping those energy levels up?
Oh, it's been a really up and down year, and it's had peaks and troughs, and the thing is, like Allegra said, is just to ask people how they're going and find out really what's at the core of it. And for us, it was getting so exhausting. One team member trying to find every single candidate for our engineering roles, of which we have multiple at one time, that I said, that's fine. We'll engage a sourcing company for 3 months. And we used our agency budget to do that. And we had them go and chase the majority of the candidates just to give him a breather. And we'd started talking about things with, did he want to reduce hours? Did he want to take extra, days off here and there? And what I actually encouraged him to do was to understand that sometimes those little circuit breakers don't give you the long-term boost that you need to your energy. And so we actually need to find long-term solutions for this. So yes, take your time off, until Allegra's point, don't put it in the HR system, just take it off. But let's also partner together on what's a longer term solution for what challenges you're facing right now.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that sits well with our final slide here on key recommendations. So look, there are about 20 recommendations in the written report, which we will sell. We're not going to sell it. We're going to give it to you. We're going to send to you. But essentially referrals, only 57% of talent teams were leaning heavily on employee referrals. This is a huge missed opportunity for 43% of teams out there. Boosting, we called it in the report, we called it programmatic advertising. Other people call it digital marketing, boosting, recruitment marketing. There seems to be, we all need to get together and decide what is our common term going to be. But this is essentially paying to put your content, let's say it's on LinkedIn, in front of specific people. So Laura, you want to go out there and reach, particular people. You can choose the location. You can choose a range of position titles. There's a range of different kind of, factors there in terms of industries, and you pay to boost your content in front of them. So I know somebody that's doing a great job. Whether they're boosting or not, I don't know, but certainly my LinkedIn feed is full of people announcing they're joining Canva. Is anyone else saying this? Is Laura? Yeah. Every day I go in there, someone else has joined Canva. They're doing a really great job of announcing this. And I think, boosting those kind of things would be really worthwhile. Talent anywhere, obviously. Only 25% of businesses accessing offshore talent, despite, in Australia, most of us have got some experience managing remote teams now. So that leaves 75% of talent teams not accessing the full available talent market. And then lastly, we've got our talent team skill mix. So exactly what you were saying, before, Laura, we've got specialist marketing skills, workforce planning, sourcing, customer and market research translated into actionable outcomes, data analytics, but then being able to sort of say, well, how do I access that? Do I augment my existing team, by using an RPO or an external service? Do I bring them in, which is what you've been doing, Allegra, and hiring people for the team? There are so many options out there. And look, you know, I can still see the chat and the Q&A going nuts, but we really are over time, and I know how busy everyone is. So I think we're going to have to skip final questions, but feel free, joe@atcevents.com.au. Shoot me through as many questions as you like. We will try to get back to you on all of them. Certainly the full report will explain in a lot more detail. But thank you so much. Thank you, Craig, Globalizations, partnering with us on this year's State of Talent Acquisition Survey. Thank you to Allegra and Laura. Really appreciate you being so candid and sharing even the, you know, the bling, the cash numbers of what's going on in your talent teams. And we are going to make the report. It's a big one. It covers so many more topics than just the ones we've talked about today. But we appreciate your time. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you. Great job, Joe.
Thanks, Joe. Thanks, Craig.
Thank you, Laura.
Thank you. Take care.